All right, now let's dig down because since you've been there, you've seen the much more personal, much more immediate micro side of this war and of the crisis that's the humanitarian crisis that's resolved that or that's come out of it. So tell me, and I'm not going to ask you to pick the most, but tell me an inspirational story that you've witnessed or that you've heard firsthand from somebody that you've met.
Okay. So I'm a writer, so I'm going to give you juxtaposition. I'm going to tell you some worst first.
Okay.
If you even touched on worst here, I'm talking to soldiers and their stories minute by minute of combat are gut wrenching, and I hope to unleash some of these videos I'm making because you can hear it from them firsthand. You don't need me to interpret it. The refugees are almost more gut wrenching because this is a civilian caught in certain spaces. Let me give you two instances. Let me give you three. There's a woman who came into the refugee center who cried for 3 hours. Now, it's hard even to talk about some of these because, I was witnessing and listening and talking to these people. She was inconsolable. What did she go through? I mean, I wasn't going to approach her for an interview. I videotaped her for a minute. I will destroy the videotape because I don't want to put it out there. I don't know that people should deal with it in the online interpretation and discussion about it because it's very personal for her. But I had to remember it, and so I videotaped it in some ways just so I could remember the emotion when I have a chance finally to sit down and write about it. She was inconsolable. She could not speak. She could not move. People were carrying her from A to B. When she finally got into a van that took her away, she was still crying as she drove away. What did she deal with? I mean, you and I can speculate. I don't know. I could speculate based on the other interviews I did. Dad dead, building demolished, house gone, cat, dog dead, children dead, neighbors dead. Saw all of it. Can't speak, can only cry. So it's tough. There was a little girl, I did a montage of her. She just never smiled. She just couldn't smile. So we tried to bring her, there's a little, stuffed rabbit that we brought over to her. Nothing. Brought her something to drink and eat. Nothing. Tried to do the Poles were cracking jokes in Ukrainian, those that spoke Ukrainian. Nothing. No response. Just could not respond at all. I talked about this on my Twitter also. I was kind of at some point cataloging people's emotions. It's like I've seen 3 people do this, so I'm going to write about it so people understand this is now a response for a teenager, a child that has witnessed these things. So I would approach people very softly and gently to try to get an interview, and the children of the adults would take their little toy and cover its eyes when I came over. I'm a stranger. I'm wearing it's a little bit unfortunate, but I have very official press looking stuff. I had an armband that I took off very quickly that said press on it also, but it's in a foreign language and it does look a little militant. I think I look a little militant. And to them, anybody that's militant that's not a Ukrainian soldier, because they recognize those uniforms and the Ukrainian flag, is a threat. And so the children had several reactions that were very similar, where they would cover the little teddy bear's eyes, or they would, in some cases, they would kind of turn the animal to the side and partly turn themselves because I was a threat or danger. And to me, that's learned behavior. Someone did that to them along their journey. In some cases, this exodus is 3 or 4 days long. They leave from Kharkiv, and Kharkiv, if you don't know, has been pounded summarily as badly as Kiev, or maybe worse, because it's a smaller city and easier to encircle. And so somewhere along the lines, mom put their hand over the child, and the child now, that's the response to some outside stimuli. There was a woman from Kharkiv who could not bring her voice down to a normal octave. It was like talking to somebody she was part deaf from the explosions. Her story was that her neighbor's house was demolished while they were in their house. All their windows were shattered, all their doors blew off. Their house shook and parts of the beams and stuff kind of came in. They went to their basement. They felt it was unsafe. I never really understood why, but they went to their neighbors because I guess they had a safer basement. And then the shelling hit their house and it collapsed. They don't know where their dad is. Their brother is fighting. He was inducted. He was like one of the guys that was on shortfall and he had to go fight. bring her voice down to a normal level. Okay, so that's the juxtaposition. Very, very terrible World War II stories from anybody that you talk to, okay? Deeply traumatized. Children that will, I'm not sure how they're going to get over this. This is going to be, beyond the humanitarian crisis, there's going to be an emotional aspect to this where you have, non-veteran veterans. I mean, these are war wounds that I saw with 19-year-old Marines that came out of combat, and now you got a 7-year-old girl who's dealing with it. So
Yeah.
So you asked about the positive then. So then the other aspect is, the little girl who is given a teddy bear and smiles, and that by far is the norm. Is that they find that there's hope out there, and they want hope. The children that are seeing. You go to any of the feeding stations, you see these people. I put it on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter because it was like so endearing. These Lithuanian dudes who own a hamburger truck and a restaurant in Lithuania. And Lithuania is the postage stamp of the country. I love it that even more so now. But these guys, you can find their names, and I would hope people might want to contribute to them because they're only using their own resources and some local church resources, by the way, to buy sausages, and they're cooking these extremely hearty meals on giant pots and in these vats and stuff, and it's unbelievable food. I mean, these guys they're real cooks. They know what they're doing. And the smiles you see in these lines of people that have been walking for a day to get across the border, in some cases 80 miles with little children. I mean, we're talking 8-year-old kids walking this distance. And, here's these guys that have brought this food truck from Lithuania and are dishing out this stuff. And the kids are just, some little girl in our camp, I put a lot of stuff on Twitter, some little girl in our camp, I think it was there's a Christian group that was amazing. I mean, it's on my website. And I'm pretty sure I know who it is. There was this young girl named Anna, who was very jovial and kind of was making connections left, right, and center because of her smile. She just was one of these girls that, immediately people want to talk to. So I think it was her. I don't know for sure, but someone brought a little pack of bubbles. And there was this girl that just was nonstop bubble blowing. So there's bubbles all over the refugee camp for a while. And all of us, the small pool of, Iceland and Italy and us reporters kind of went over to say, where are the bubbles from? All got pictures of her blowing these bubbles. Well, then Yakub, the cop from Warsaw, and all of his buddies, within 2 days had bought like boxes and crates of these bubbles. And then, all of the children that were there 2 days ago obviously were gone, but there was a new batch and a new group of children. Now there's bubbles everywhere and there's smiles everywhere, and kids are exceedingly, happy about the things that are happening. Poland itself, in my mind, is an extremely good, positive story. The outpouring of support is almost all volunteer through organizations like the Polish Red Cross, through Doctors Without Borders in Poland, quite a few others I put on the website, but they're just volunteers who will drive up. In a lot of cases, it happens like this. I'd say maybe 75% of the time. A village decides to adopt a family. So they send they nominate someone to go get them. They literally just drive to the border. They have a minivan. There's a guy who says, Warsaw. And there's a sign, Warsaw, just like you see in the airport. Mr. Jones, Mr. Rawlings, whatever. A family says, well, we have someone we know in Warsaw. And they said, hop in. They take them up to Warsaw. They house them, feed them, clothe them, wash them, giving them facilities to wash clothes and themselves for a week or two, while Poland takes down all their information and waits for their next destination. The EU takes the next step, which is EU countries have said we'll take X number of refugees, and they go to that town in Warsaw, and let's say Germany has 2,600 apartments ready, which is literally what they're doing. They pick up a family from Warsaw, a family from all these different locations, and they take them over to Germany, and they say, here's your new apartment for you and your children. You're going to eat free for a year. You have a television. We're going to help you get a job. Even with the language barrier, we'll help you get language lessons. We're going to put your kids in school. It's unbelievable, absolutely amazing. So we're literally looking at a refugee crisis that has not been on par. I believe we're going to get close on Sunday where it's almost over what we saw in World War II, but it's on par with World War II, and the response is nothing short of magnificent. It's a Marshall Plan, before the end of a war to support refugees that, when I learned how it was working, I was like, wait a minute, how is this working? From personal stories of towns helping to the state saying, we have a block of apartments to help you. Now, what happens after that? I couldn't tell you, what happens with displaced persons who's pro and con. I mean, some good, some bad. Teenagers, 19-year-old kids sometimes get in trouble because they don't speak the language. People may look at this and say, well, I've dealt with so much trauma, I kind of just want to sit on the couch and watch TV for a while, but God bless them, I think most of us would say that's okay. So those are the positive stories I'm seeing, is that systematically Poland and Europe are doing amazing work to try to deal with the crisis.